right, welcome to it. This is Voices from the Edge, a brand new podcast where music, technology, and culture collide. My name is Mookie, the program director of the independent 88.5 FM here in Southern California, along with David Boynes, sociologist, university administrator, professor, mentor, resident punk rock enthusiast, and tea drinker. Or is that wine?
It is green tea.
I'm sure it is. We're joined by Ivor Weiner as well, a South African expat, educator, and family man. And how are you, Ivor?
I'm good. That family man part is debatable, but yeah, I'm here. I'm happy to be here.
Izzy Argueta, who is a CSUN student, aspiring civil engineer, boba drink lover, and leader of the band's horn section. That's true, actually. You're a brass or woodwind player?
Woodwind, sax.
And our guest today for episode 1 of Voices from the Edge is Wendy Ashley. To say that you are a social worker, I think would do an incredible disservice, because looking at your resume, it is absolutely incredible. Over 25 years experience in mental health, addiction, recovery, child welfare. The list goes on. And I think Ivor previously had mentioned that you're the type of professor that you just want to go out and have a beer with. So Wendy, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Guess you have a pretty good working relationship with the other professors in the room.
I do. I just met Izzy today. I'm going to have you do some projects for me because you sound super advanced, maybe play at a wedding. But I do know David Boynes and Ivor Weiner really well. Should I?
We love Wendy. I mean, she's being really complimentary right now, but I don't know if she would consider us friends, but we've certainly worked on project and we just love her.
She's the rock star of the team for sure.
Yeah.
I love them. They're good guys.
One thing that we wanted to touch on, because music is such a big part of what this podcast is really all about, is songs that got us through. And I think I told you off the air already. I really don't want to put you on the spot, but I am asking the question, Wendy. Were there any songs or artists or just any music in general that kind of helped you get through this past year under the pandemic?
So let me just start by saying I am a very eclectic music person, right? Like one day I might be hip hop, another day I might be R&B, another day I might be big band. Like I like a little bit of everything. But the pandemic for me was all about 80s. I went hard. I went hard on Wham. I went hard on Soft Cell. I went back to Depeche Mode. I did a little 80s hip hop. I did like NWA. I did a lot of 80s genre. Somehow that was soothing for me. And I think mostly because it's nostalgic, right? Like that's when I was sort of in my my youth.
Hey,
right,
Wendy, let me ask you a question. Sorry, Mookie. Any Olivia Newton-John? Because one of our hosts here got really into Olivia Newton-John. So I just wanted to find out if that was on your playlist.
If it's Grease, I'm all day. Grease 1, not Grease 2, but yes, 100%. But outside of that, who is it? Is it Izzy? Is it you? Or
No,
you'll have to guess. You'll have to guess that one.
It's got to be David.
Totally Hot is the very first album I ever bought. 1978 or something like that. It's right around the Grease time. Mm-hmm. Not quite 80s, right? But I don't know what it was about Olivia, and then punk rock came in shortly after. Nice transition, huh?
A little bit hard to jump, but I support that.
Yeah. Well, Wendy, it sort of sounds like you went back to the music that is comforting for you, that you were sort of growing up with maybe in your formative years, right?
Indeed.
Like slipping into a warm bath or something like that. And Ivor, you had mentioned previously that, I mean, you kind of did the same thing during the pandemic, going back to your roots as far as music.
Yeah. And I'm so glad that Wendy's here because she'll totally understand it. My other hosts have not understood this. Wanting to go back to the cradle, you know, I started listening to African music. I didn't understand why. I mean, I have a good collection. And then David and I we're big fans of Gabor Mate. I'm sure you know who that is.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And he says, look, this whole fear-based, whatever you had, your reaction to the pandemic, is a reaction you had at birth. And then I started thinking about how my parents, at night would put me in a dark room. Those days, parents in the 60s, they'd let you cry and all that stuff. So I was just going back to my bedroom, and it was a beautiful thing. We go back to what we know, maybe, huh?
You had me at Gabor Mate.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, it's interesting. 80s is having a kind of heyday revival. I'm not sure what that is all about, but Wham, hearing lots of Wham, hearing lots of Depeche Mode, lots of Duran Duran.
I love Duran Duran.
I owned every album. Like the first Izzy, I'm with you. Which one was your favorite? Which one was your favorite member of Duran Duran?
I don't have one.
How dare you?
Well, Izzy, who turned you on to Duran Duran? Did you have like an older sibling or something, or did you just find that band by accident? Because you being the youngest of the group here.
Well, I'm glad Wendy mentioned the 80s because I think that's one of my favorite musical eras. Growing up, my dad played a lot of 80s music, so that's how I got into it.
Yeah, I was just recently. YouTube, I think, put out a documentary on the new romantic movement. Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, all of these bands came out of that. I could not pull myself away from it. And I had a whole bunch of work I had to do, but I sat through the whole thing, and that's pretty rare for me. But Duran Duran, I saw them play live 1983, San Diego Stadium, 8th row. One of my friends' fathers was a movie reviewer in San Diego, and he got us free tickets. It was awesome.
Good concert, good musicians.
Lovely.
Yeah.
I'm jealous. Sorry. I'm so jealous because I was about Duran Duran in the 80s. I was about them. Like everybody liked Simon. Everybody liked Nick. I was a Roger girl. I was the only one that liked Roger. And I was convinced we were going to date at some point.
What instrument does Roger play?
I think the drums.
And Simon Le Bon, that's the Duran Duran guy, right?
That's the front man.
Nobody loves a drummer except Wendy. Thank you, Wendy. I appreciate that. David, that was 83, right? You went to see that concert?
Pretty sure 83.
How's this for a concert in 83 at I don't know if it's called the Forum in Austin, the Police?
Oh my God, Sting. Yes. Don't make me sing every step you take.
Yeah.
Sting is amazing. Actually, he did a sort of a private members only thing for our public radio station a few years back at the Performing Arts Center on the CSUN campus. We had like 300 people there or so. He came with a full band. He played a lot of the hits, and it was just like a goosebumps sort of moment,
Wow.
I was there, and David was very jealous, but I was in the first row. I wish I would have known you then. Mookie, were you there?
I was there. I worked for the station. David, you mentioned something that a term that I've never heard before, the new romantic movement. Is that actually a term for a musical genre? Because that's new to me. I've heard the term neo soul, and now I use that on a day-to-day basis. The new romantic movement. Is that like the Paisley Underground scene or something?
Not quite. I mean, Paisley Underground, I think, was mostly Southern California based, like 3 O'Clock and Pandora's and
the Bangles,
like the Bangles, yeah. But the new romantic movement came out of England and out of the punk movement, actually. And these were the like Steve Strange, the more kind of like Visage, I think that was his band, the more kind of flamboyant glam bands, but they were doing dance music.
Mm-hmm.
And very influenced by Bowie and the whole androgyny kind of movement that he helped to bring into music. But they had a punk edge too, and lots of speed, lots of kind of dance energy. I think Duran Duran, Depeche Mode, Japan, they were all lumped into the whole new movement. But I think a lot of them would they wouldn't classify themselves that way. But yeah, definite.
Mm-hmm. Kind of Japan. Somebody actually turned me on to Japan several years ago. Heard them for the first time. I absolutely loved it. All the dark synth wave stuff. Izzy, have you ever heard of the new romantic movement as far as music?
I feel like I've heard that term before, but I wouldn't know what it means.
And you have a vast musical knowledge. You said that you love the Beatles, Izzy, and
I do.
artists like The Weeknd.
Yes.
What'd you think of the Super Bowl performance?
I really liked it. When I watched it on TV, I wasn't really sure what to expect because I heard that he contributed 7 million of his own money into the show. So I was expecting a lot.
Wow.
It was good. It was good. At first, I didn't like it too much, but then I watched it again and I really liked it. Yeah.
$7 million. I didn't hear that. You know how much research you could get done, Wendy, with $7 million?
Yes.
You know how many conferences you go to? Hey, you know what? I was just going to ask you a question, Izzy, and maybe everybody else feels, but obviously this pandemic has really killed human connection, and I think artists, musicians, when they perform, that the audience is a drug. I mean, what gets that? And I watched that because I like to watch the Super Bowl, and then after that, I watched Michael Jackson. I went Bruno Mars, and the energy of those performances as opposed to The Weeknd, and it must have been really difficult for him to do that. And so I give him props.
I hated the performance, but sorry.
Yeah, no.
But it's because I'm old. I mean, at this point, I have children, and the people that my children like, I can't like. I'm sorry. My son is 14, and he's all about The Weeknd, and that ruined it for me. I have to tell you, though, Ivor, that Bruno Mars is one of my favorite. I've seen him in concert 4 times, and
Wow.
he puts on a hell of a show. He is phenomenal. That Super Bowl year, it was fantastic. That's my favorite one, I think.
I remember that one. So there's no sort of contemporary artists that you're digging on right now, like active, like new school people.
I mean, yes. I don't know. I like Big Sean. I like Pharrell. I like Rihanna. I can deal with Drake sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
I like a little bit of Lizzo. I like a little bit of stuff, but you have to catch me off guard. I'll hear a 2 Chainz song when I'm in the car with my family and be like, oh, that's nice. but if I'm alone, I'm listening to Michael Jackson. I'm listening to Prince. I'm listening to Duran, not necessarily newer stuff.
Can I just tell you real quick? I saw Lizzo a really long time ago before she blew up. She was the opening act to the opening act at the Casbah in San Diego. I saw the artist Harmar Superstar years ago. And the opening act, I kid you not, was Macaulay Culkin's pizza-inspired Velvet Underground band called the Pizza Underground. And then Lizzo actually opened up for them. It was just her and a DJ, and it was awesome. And it was just a smoky room, real small capacity, just a small club. And then, flash forward to now, Lizzo's like, pretty big, pretty popular, just how to tell that story. Sometimes I look back and be like, man, I went to some amazing shows,
It's always fun when you don't know who somebody is and then they become big and you're like, oh, who knew?
Yeah, I know. But that and also $1.50 still can't get you on the bus. It's like, not gonna, maybe some bragging rights, right? It's nice to be able to tell you guys.
And shows where you don't remember them too. Those are good shows too. Wendy, I got a question for you because a fellow academic here. Dr. Boyens has a theory. He wants to do a study. Maybe the 3 of us can get together that music sounds better in the car than if you just play it through a CD or you hear it in, somewhere. What do you think about that? Do you agree?
Well, I agree. I actually think that there are 2 places, maybe 3, but there are 2 places where music is the best. One is the car. The second is when you're cooking in the kitchen. And the third is in the shower. Those are my 3 favorite places in that order.
Mm-hmm.
Do you have a smart speaker at home or like a Bluetooth speaker where you're walking around holding the speaker? I have one here, and when I'm cooking dinner for the family, it's in the kitchen or.
Oh, let me tell you, because of my relationship with Amazon, we're intimate.
Yeah.
I have them in every room. So I have one in the bathroom. I have one in the kitchen. I have one in the bedroom. So all it means is pairing and I'm in it.
I think Alexa actually would be a great guest for a podcast coming up. Real quick, Ivor, this is Voices from the Edge, brand new podcast powered by Cal State Northridge. Ivor Weiner, David Boyens, myself is Mookie or Mark, if you prefer. Izzy, Simply Izzy is here, and Wendy Ashley. Sorry to step on your big toes there, Ivor. What'd you want to say?
No problem. They're big. That brings up an interesting point because we talk about technology. Now, Wendy's got Alexa in every room of the house. You're into having your data sold and mined and all that kind of stuff. It's good with you.
Listen, conspiracy theorist, it's not, I'm not up for grabs. It's not Alexa. They're just like wireless speakers. But they, you turn on the phone or turn on the speaker and they connect.
And the red light comes on for the camera too?
I hope not when I'm in the shower.
Have you guys ever had where you think of something and then that targeted ad pops up on social media?
Yes.
That
scares me.
Microchip is in the vaccine, right?
Well, that's for sure. Just ask Bill Gates.
But it's all linked to your Amazon account, though.
Izzy, do you remember the ad that you were targeted with after you simply thought about it?
A lot of food ads, mostly food. Or I think I was talking about buying new furniture or a new desk, and then I was getting a lot of Amazon ads for desks and like desk lamps and things like that.
I heard a story about like this couple who was just in their day-to-day lives talk about cat food. They didn't have any pets. They didn't have any cats. Their phones was near them or whatever, but they just talked about cat food for a day and a half. And sure enough, all the ads were cat food on their social media platforms. I'll give you a quick story. Me and my sister were having a conversation about digital marketing and stuff like that, as a marketing platform. And she was telling me, yeah, you get these targeted ads. So it's like whatever you search for, that's kind of what comes up in your Facebook feed. And she's like, I'll show you. So she goes to her phone, she opens up her Facebook and she's scrolling. And she's like, oh, here, look, here's an ad. And it was for, we had a good laugh. It was for IBS, irritable bowel syndrome. Yeah. And I'm like, what are you searching for or whatever?
Yeah.
Well, it's not the appliances; it's the drones up above. That's why I wear a full bodysuit of tinfoil when I go to bed. So you should try it. You should really
5G.
That's your April Fool's protection, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's the surveillance capitalism. That's a whole nother podcast for sure.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. Any social media? I'm sorry, David. Any social media spots to plug, Wendy, that you are on? Are you on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook, and all the other ones that I don't know about?
I'm on Instagram. I have a business account, Dr. Wendy Ashley. I did have a Facebook account, but 2 days before my birthday, apparently it was hacked, or Facebook decided that I was no longer appropriate, and it was completely disappeared. And I do have Twitter, but I don't use it.
Have you been posting some questionable posts?
No. Listen, I put pictures of my dog or my kids or, me with work stuff. It was crazy. Out of nowhere, they asked me for a password or asked me to reset my password. And then when I logged back in, it was gone.
Mm-hmm.
No one at Facebook will respond to me either, which I think is weird.
Twitter is really unfair. How can you ask an academic to put anything in 120 characters? That's torture. That should be cruel and unusual punishment.
None of us can simplify.
Mm-mm.
Wendy, I want to go back to music if I can and ask you, maybe from a social work perspective or in your own experience, why is music important for us during the pandemic?
Well, I think that there's a couple of reasons. I mean, I think the piece that Mookie was talking about that I sort of initiated was the piece about comfort and nostalgia and soothing. I mean, I think that the reality is this has gotten everybody a little bit destabilized, a little derailed. And so music is really good for self-soothing and for calming and for, just managing some of the anxiety that we live with every day. But the other is, and I think it depends on what kind of music you listen to. I like a lot of R&B. I like a lot of hip hop. And I really think that there is something about that music that has social justice elements in it. And so for people to hear about similar stories or struggles or marginalization or, discrimination and to have it validated, I think, especially for people who are vulnerable, that's a big deal.
Yeah, that's such a great response. And how do you think that relates to the racial injustice movements that we saw this, 2020 especially.
2020 was a rough year. I mean, I really think I like to call it the dual pandemic, because I think a piece of it is the viral piece and the other is the racial reckoning. And the reality of the racial reckoning, because nobody could do anything but sit there and watch it, we all got to see Breonna Taylor, Ahmaud Arbery, George Floyd. We saw that. And for white people, they were horrified, right? People of color have been watching this stuff for years. Like, we can go back to Emmett Till, we can go back a lot of years. But there was something validating about, and I think the other piece of this, by the way, is the media, like the coverage, the fact that you can watch it 24 hours a day, the fact that people are taking videos of it is very different.
Social media.
Mm-hmm. Well, and I think Will Smith said it. It's like, it's not that the crimes are different. It's that we have visible evidence of it now, which we never had before. So I say all that just to say that I think that that this has been a huge trauma for all of us to manage. What was the original question? Was it about music?
Yeah, it's about music.
Okay.
But that's I want to piggyback on that, because I think you're so we as white people, we can't fully understand that experience. Growing up in South Africa, I have a little bit of a sense of that the goalposts always move. You don't get the apology. You don't get, that in some way there was some vindication and some validation of these things happening that people have been saying happening for years, right? I mean, I think the United States is a pretty violent, racist country, and finally we sort of began to confront that. So, but it doesn't help in a sense, because if you have children and you're Black, I mean, you're still having difficult conversations about being pulled over and all that. I mean, when are we going to see some real change? I don't know. Are we seeing change? Do you feel like there is some change taking place?
There's change, but it's not resolution. I mean, I think that a lot of people felt like they could exhale when the Derek Chauvin verdict came out, right? People felt like, okay, this is something, but there wasn't so much relief. There wasn't so much of a belief that, okay, this is over. Like, we're not in a post-racial era. There's a lot to be done. I mean, and if I go back to David's original question, I think that a lot of my research is on racial trauma, like on how experiencing acts of oppression, experience belittlement and marginalization on a consistent basis is traumatizing. It's also traumatizing to watch it over and over and over and over again. I don't know if you all remember a couple of years ago, in I think it was 2006, the summer of 2008, when Mike Brown, Philando Castile, like there was a bunch of deaths. And they kept showing the videos of like people getting shot in cars with their kids in the backseat. And I just was sick the whole summer. And I just think that when we talk about soothing, there is no way to live a life faced with that every day, especially if you have dual levels of marginalization, right? You're a woman, you're Black, you're disabled, you're trans, like you add more to it and it intersectionally becomes more complicated. So I do think that if you can't rely on other people or external things to manage that anxiety and trauma, I do think music can be helpful.
Mm. And just like the 1960s era sort of protest songs of the day, I think that a lot of that is going on right now. I mean, music is an art form. It's a form of expression, and certainly a way to get the point across,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Artists are now like pairing with like poets. Like Amanda Gorman has gotten all kind of work. Like there's quite a few poets who have been sort of doing revolutionary dialogues or discourse or poems and being connected with music. So I think that's absolutely true.
Yeah, and when you were talking, Wendy, I couldn't help but just reflect on the Gil Scott-Heron song, "The Revolution Will Not Be Televised." I don't know if you know that song.
Oh, yeah.
I do.
But it's just such an amazing song. Revolution will not be televised, the revolution will be live, right? And okay, so let's think about that in 2020. Sure, the revolution was live, but in the middle of a pandemic, the revolution being social mediaized, televised, right? It had a huge impact.
Yeah.
You think one of those lyrics from Gil Scott-Heron would be "The revolution will be on your smartphone" if he was living in these days?
Yeah.
Because it kind of is.
I mean, Stevie Wonder has a great one that he came out with, Injustice song. I mean, just brilliant, you know.
Yeah, and it's uncanny. Sorry, Ivor. It's uncanny when you go back and listen to some of those songs because they are still very relevant.
Oh yeah.
What is that Stevie Wonder song? I haven't heard it.
Oh, it's a great song. I think it's called Injustice or something, but it didn't get a lot of airplay, but just a really great, you know, funky groove and pretty much saying, you know, we don't, you know, we just don't believe you. We don't believe that any change is going to come about. And I think that really needs to be understood from a white person's perspective that, you know, I see all this, you know, the corporations jumping on the bandwagon, the woke bandwagon, but Black people, people that have been historically marginalized, don't. How long is it going to take before they trust the system? Because the system, it has shown them time and time again that no matter what, it's going to be in the system's favor. So, you know, but.
Do you think we were ever headed to this sort of post-racial world, or were there any glimpses of it previous to, you know, 2020? And what do we do to get to that post-racial world?
Who are you asking?
I don't know.
Well, before Wendy jumps in,
dissertation question.
Yeah, let me just say that I think what this country needs is a Truth and Reconciliation Commission, and in every city and state, there should be town halls where people should go up and admit to their wrongdoings, and that's the only way to heal. Nelson Mandela understood that, and certainly it helped post-apartheid. It really did. But it's a brave endeavor, and I don't think it's going to happen in this country. I don't know, Wendy, what do you think?
I mean, what I agree with wholeheartedly is the fact that no one person can do this. We're not waiting for the great brown hope or the great Black hope or the great white hope. We're looking for communities, right? I don't think we've been in a place where we're being ready to deal with this. I don't. I think that we think we are at places. Like, a lot of people thought that Obama being in office was the beginning of the post-racial era. No, it wasn't. And I don't know about you all, but what I saw on CSUN's campus right after he was elected traumatized me. Like, I walked out of my building and saw students like protesting Obama with monkey faces on.
No,
and I was horrified. I mean, obviously, oh, yes. And people have the right to free speech. They can say what they want, but it was such hate oriented. And I just had never heard people react to the president that way. So I don't think that we've had, I mean, I think we call it a racial reckoning because we're having to really deal with some things. I think that we have such a level of, white supremacy is so embedded in our culture, in our systems. To speak to what you're talking about, Ivor, there does need to be some dismantling. And it's not just abolition. There needs to be some humility and humanity to it, right? Like, we can't just defund the police. Okay, then what? Where's that money going to go?
Yeah.
Right. And obviously people will hate this perspective, but I do think that there are other creative ways. And while we are doing that, we also have to find space for healing because people are not okay. I've never been more busy than I am now. I'm a therapist also, by the way.
Yeah, this is the heyday of the social worker, I think, right?
Yeah, we are really busy as social workers. It's a big thing.
Yeah. And, you know, as you're speaking, I know that maybe you can help us understand a perspective that I think is really important in social work right now, which is anti-oppressive practices and anti-racist practices. And help us understand what that's all about.
So can I just contextualize it a second?
For sure.
Real quick? Can I put some context? So prior to this, right, prior to 2020, people were very much about the cultural competence, and then they were very much about equity, diversity, and inclusion, right? Those were sort of the buzzwords. But with what has happened in the last year and a half, we are really realizing that this goes far beyond justice, equity, inclusion, diversity. And so an anti-racist, anti-oppressive approach really is about three things. It's about awareness, right? Like really being aware of who you are and how you show up, not only individually, but interpersonally. It's about action, right? Dr. Ibram Kendi talks about this in How to Be an Anti-Racist in his book. He says that there's no neutrality anymore. You can't claim, I'm not a racist. You have to actually have action. So the second thing is action. You got to be doing something to work towards acknowledging, dismantling, consciousness. And the third is accountability. And I'm really a big believer that individual accountability is necessary and collective accountability is necessary, right? And those things change the climate. They make it safer, they make it more diverse, they make it more psychologically safe. They create inclusion. And I think that we can, talking about trust and connection, they do a good job of healing.
So as opposed to what the sort of institutional racism issues that need to be addressed, what could I do as an individual? Obviously, it's not good enough to be neutral.
No, and there is no neutral anymore. That's gone. It's like the middle class. It's gone, right? I think that there are individual ways and then there are sort of macro ways, right? So individually, I think that if you're going to take action, you got to really be present, right? If you say you're not a racist, but you see me getting hit in the face and you don't do anything, then you're complicit. That's the way it is, right? So if people are making racist comments, you got to say something. You can't laugh at racist jokes, right? Like, because you are someone of privilege, your voice is really important. Allyship and saying that everybody has their own individual work to do, right? Whether that means reading or, provoking, making friends, watching Netflix documentaries that you would never watch, reading books that you would feel uncomfortable reading, doing some individual work. But I think the larger, and this is what I'm excited about, because historically I have been hired by organizations to do their diversity training, right? That old thing. These days, organizations are saying, we want the diversity training, but we also, and I'm answering your question, Mookie, what they're saying is, we want you to come in and change our culture. So look at our policies, look at our practices. How are we hiring? How are we having consumers participate on the board? And so the second part of your question is, take a look and analyze things with an anti-racist lens. Look at what the policies are in whatever organizations you work in. Look and make sure that there's room for people to have pronouns on paperwork. What the hiring practices are. Things like that can really change how an organization or how the work you do with organizations, how effective it is.
Mm. So Wendy, you in a sense, you're talking about a fancy word, decolonization, right?
I am talking about decolonization.
And you know what? The three of us were involved in a pretty great disparity study called FETA, and you really taught me. I can't speak for David; he's a sociologist; he knows everything. So about humility, right? And so we did a video, and I said, Mookie, and this is just an example. I said, listen, I grew up in South Africa, in a very affluent, privileged life, and I can't deny that. I mean, I for a long time when I came to this country, I was so ashamed of where I came from. I wouldn't, I changed my accent. I did all kinds of things. But when I felt true redemption, or I felt true, authentic about myself, is when I said, listen, I didn't choose that country and that life, but it is a part of me. And so on a daily basis, I have to think about my privilege and where I come from, right? And that's what I'm saying, is that unless people are willing to do that, I don't see a lot changing.
No, and people are very uncomfortable with that. I mean, there is a belief that I'm going to say it wrong. I'm going to mess up. I'm going to make people feel bad. Let me tell you something. You're going to make them feel worse if you use your privilege to be silent. That's worse.
Beautiful.
Yeah,
I love it. By the way, Ivor, when I went to South Africa a few years ago, I was so thrown off, because here I'm Black, right? Actually multiracial, but here I'm Black. In Africa, in South Africa, I was colored. And I went with my husband and he was considered Black. There was a demarcation, right, between he and I because of our skin tone. And that was something I had never experienced here. So just the influence of apartheid today still is staggering.
Oh, the colonialists did some crazy stuff, man. And that all that work has to be unpacked and done with humility. And I love that because you taught me about humility. I appreciate that.
And Wendy, this might be a bit of a tricky question, but I'm wondering if you have advice for someone like Izzy, college student, civil engineer, kind of emerging in this context of pandemic, really kind of the flowering of colonial movements, anti-oppressive and anti-racist work. It's in the culture in a way that it hasn't been maybe ever, certainly not for a long time. And I mean, Izzy, and maybe this is for Izzy too. Like, how are you reflecting, on this moment? And this is like a moment that is your generation is going to be kind of known for growing up in this kind of era, and it's going to have, I think, really important effects and probably really positive effects on consciousness and transformation that young people are going. I hope it does, at least, that young people are going to experience. And you're a young woman of color going into a STEM field.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Talk about a complicated
Big question, huh?
Yeah, that's a big question. Can you summarize a little bit everything you just said?
I think the original question was, Dr. Ashley, if you had any words of wisdom for Izzy and her peers.
Do you want me to start and give Izzy a minute? Or do you want to start, Izzy?
You can go.
I am a believer, as you were saying, David, that this generation is knowledgeable in a way that we were not. I mean, when I talk to my son about law enforcement, he understands it differently. When I talk to him about gender binaries, he understands it differently. Like, there is just a fluidity to the younger generations that we don't have. I think that that's going to be on your side, Izzy. You seem to be somewhat astute and aware and conscious. The other thing is that I'm guessing that you already are aware that in the STEM world, it is very male. And so your lived experience around the level of whiteness that's in the STEM field and the level of maleness that is in the STEM field can already other you, right? And so social work is a place where we talk about this all the time. Math, STEM, not always. So making sure that, I mean, my recommendation to you would be to make sure that you have a community, not just your professional community, people that you can talk to about this, like that you have mentors, because there are going to be struggles that feel gendered, that feel racially motivated, that feel a lot of those intersectional elements, and you're going to need some support.
Yeah, thank you for that. Yeah, and I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're all here because like you said, we don't really talk about anything like this in what I do. So I really like to hear what you guys have to say. I think it gives me a lot of perspective.
Cool.
But hopefully, Izzy, in the future, you'll be hired on in your field because of the merit of your work in the past and how studious you were and, all of that stuff. So we all know you're on the right track.
Yeah, hang out more with Dr.
No matter
Ashley
what.
instead of Boyens. Yeah, that's the first recommendation I give you.
Sorry, I didn't hear. What was that?
Did you just say hang out with David?
No, I said hang out with Dr. Ashley instead of Dr. Boyens. You'll be okay.
Oh, well,
I like wine.
That's
I like
a given.
coffee.
Actually, I stand behind that recommendation too.
Izzy has a dog named Coffee.
I do.
Oh.
Yeah, some sort of mutt, right? Or I don't know.
He's a Chihuahua.
Oh, is he highly strung? Is he? Chihuahuas are highly strung, right? I mean, they need some therapy, don't they? How's your Chihuahua? Highly strung?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Dr. Wendy Ashley, do you drink coffee?
Yes, but no more than a cup and a half a day. Because I'm already a little hyper. I'm a little high strung myself. I'm a little Chihuahua-like. So nobody needs to push that button.
I just needed to keep up.
Yeah, Mookie was trying to sell us some $100 cups of coffee?
No, see, and I told you already, you guys, I drink coffee all day. It's just part of my day-to-day routine. And I'm by no means am I a connoisseur or a gourmet or anything like that. But we've all been here quarantined together. I have a toddler. We take walks around the neighborhood, and there's like more than a handful of coffee shops where I live, So I walk into one the other day, and I noticed they have something called geisha coffee, which apparently is incredibly rare. And they imported it from Costa Rica, and they were selling it for $20 a cup. So me being such a coffee guy,
You tried it.
pretty curious about a $20 a cup coffee, So I take a picture of it and I text my wife, and she's like, no. Do not get that $20 coffee. Come home and I'll make you something from, the Mr. Coffee machine or whatever. So no, I didn't try the geisha coffee, and no, I've never tried the coffee that's passed through the digestive tract of a tree-dwelling marsupial. You ever heard of that coffee?
Yeah, don't try it. Let me tell you, I started getting into buying coffee from Panama, $30 a pound. You know what? The stuff that comes in a bottle, or Folgers or whatever.
Yeah,
I can't taste the difference, and you spend $30. So
I beg to differ. I'm a coffee snob. Beg to differ.
Okay, so would you go for that $20 cup?
I absolutely would. Yeah,
I hear ya.
absolutely.
I think coffee tastes better in the car, which might be a companion study to
Yes.
Dr. David Boynes' study about
listening
music.
to the radio.
Yes.
And Duran Duran comes on, Hungry Like the Wolf. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Little hungry like the wolf. I'm in all day. Mookie, I would say that I think that when you get quality coffee, it has a whole different flavor. I mean, I splurged during the pandemic and bought an espresso machine, which by the way is delightful.
Love it.
Because I was spending so much money on Starbucks that my kids I wasn't contributing to their college funds. So I bought the espresso machine, and it's delicious. The coffee is you don't even need to put a bunch of sugar in it, which is normally what I do.
Mm-hmm.
So I do think that and I love coffee shops. I don't live in an area where there's a lot of them, but they make a difference, the kind of coffees that they have. So I got 5 on it, Mookie. If you want to all get together and give you some money towards the $20, I got $5 on it for you.
Appreciate that. It's all sold out, unfortunately, at the coffee shop, but maybe it'll be back. And Kopi,
cycle back.
Kopi
You know what?
Luwak
That coffee came
is a
from
thing.
Pittsburgh, Mookie. I'm telling you. You just put a different label. Hey, Wendy, did you get an expensive? Or did you get like one of the Keurig or Nespresso? What did you
I got
get?
an espresso, but those are a couple $100. They're not cheap.
Oh, yeah.
It's not the high end one. I got the lower end one.
I love that stuff. I haven't smoked reefer in forever. I think my stimulant of choice is coffee.
Let me just tell you, we know you haven't smoked it because you said reefer.
Yeah. You know what? That was like what? 1972 reefer. Yeah.
Like 19.
Listen,
Yeah, Mary Jane, hey.
I'm still telling my kids,
baby, get with the times. Go cannabis.
We date ourselves. I tell my kids, which doobie you be? And they're like, that's not funny. I'm like, it's hilarious. What are you talking about?
Mom's getting a kick out of herself over there.
All day long. It's all I got. It's all I got.
It's like the word boomer, Wendy, David denies he's a boomer, but we're all boomers, I mean, as he looks at all of us, like you have no idea using terms like reefer and, come on. Facebook, everybody.
I know. Facebook is for old people. So true.
Yeah.
Izzy was just telling us that. So we have to put together some social media platforms for Voices from the Edge, this particular podcast. And Izzy recommends we get on Instagram immediately.
Yeah, that's where people go. You have to be over like 40 to be on Facebook.
Yeah.
I was recommending MySpace, but apparently that's not a thing.
Yeah. What about Twitch? My daughter got on Twitch. I thought it was like a seizure association. Twitch.
TikTok.
Yeah, TikTok.
Yeah. I forgot.
That's my 10-year-old.
Snapchat. Yeah.
Snapchat.
And
No.
Discord, like Twitch and Discord. What's going on? Like
Discord.
Yeah.
Discord's
Those are-
blowing up, baby.
I think those are more like gaming platforms.
Yeah. My 14-year-old all day long has Twitch and Discord stuff. If we let him, he would be in his room 24 hours a day doing God knows what with those games. We've lost him.
No, they're addictive. I mean, I can see the appeal. My daughter just got on Twitch and she's doing the gaming thing and everything, and it's very appealing to sit around and comment, to play a game and then comment on it. I don't get it, but I understand it might be very appealing.
Hey.
Izzy, do you dabble in video games? No, you
Not
don't
at
have
all.
any time. You're like you're wise beyond your years, and
Thank
have
you.
no time for that.
Izzy's listening to the Beatles on an 8-track.
Not an
Wendy, you remember an
8-track.
8-track? Do you remember
I
an
used to
8-track?
have
Oh,
one.
yeah. Yeah, there you go.
Dr. Wendy Ashley, what was the first CD or record or cassette tape or 8-track that you ever purchased?
So I bought two at one time. I bought Michael Jackson and I bought the Off the Wall album. And then I also
Yes.
bought the first Duran Duran album.
Wow.
I can't remember which one it was, but I bought them at the same time and I was so excited.
Vinyl, right?
Vinyl.
And are you originally from LA or SoCal?
Yep, born and raised.
Oh, no kidding.
I'm a native.
What part of town?
I grew up in the San Gabriel Valley, so like Alhambra area, Alhambra, Pasadena, like that area. And then when I went to high school, my mom got married and I went to high school in Whittier, which is very far. And then I went to school in Riverside and then I made my way back to LA. So I've been all over the city.
Mm.
Tower
I have a
Records,
question.
Is that where you got it?
Where I got what?
Tower Records.
Oh, you know what? Where did I get it? I either got it at Tower or like Warehouse or whatever, one of those.
House. I remember Warehouse.
Mhm.
Me too.
Izzy had a question. Izzy?
I just had a question for Wendy. What is your favorite Michael Jackson album?
Don't say Thriller.
It has to be Thriller all day long.
Oh.
Thriller. I love Thriller. What are you talking about?
No,
And then
Off
there's
the
the
Wall.
choreography.
Like-
The choreography immediately comes.
Right? You got to do your favorite moves.
Yep, that was
That's
the
the only one
era,
I know.
era of the music video, and that Thriller video it just blew everything away.
It was so amazing.
It was
life changing.
So amazing.
It was a
That was-
production as it was theater.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and that was really before Michael started struggling in some other ways, right? Like, Black people talk about Black Michael and White Michael. That was when he was still Black Michael, right? Like he was still brown.
Mm.
I mean, really. But let me ask you, Izzy, back. What's your favorite Beatles album?
I think for me, it's Rubber Soul.
That's a good one.
I love Rubber Soul.
My favorite Beatles album is Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Man. That's my favorite. Nobody else likes that one but me.
David does.
I know.
Yeah.
Watch the movie.
No,
too.
I like that one too.
Yes.
Did you see the movie?
Mhm.
It defined my childhood in so many ways. I don't know why, but it's like I just watched that movie probably like 30 times.
Wendy,
It's so good.
are you taking in new clients? Because David might need to talk that one through. The Olivia Newton-John and that. How many sessions?
doubt.
How many
Louise
sessions
Garrett.
EMDR? 4 sessions EMDR, you think?
Maybe 2.
Okay.
I'm sorry,
His brain is very active.
What did you say? What is EMDR?
EMDR is eye movement desensitization reprocessing. It's an intervention. It's a trauma intervention. And so essentially the idea is that talk therapy doesn't access the parts of the brain where trauma is stored. And so if by using this technique, you can get at those parts directly and decrease the sensitivity to trauma. And I am certified in EMDR.
Very interesting.
Wendy, I got to tell you a quick story because I tried EMDR and it pretty much saved my life. And I want to tell you, and everything,
Really?
no way, and it's definitely, evidence-based now, I think, but at the time it was seen as a sort of, adjunct or whatever. I had a lot of trauma growing up in South Africa, and I was playing in a band. I would come home on a Sunday night, and I would go to close my gate, and I would feel it. I wouldn't see them, but a crowd of Africans coming with me with machetes and pangas and all kinds of, and I would just freak out. And I had like a year of that, and just terrible nightmares. And so I went to Kaiser and I said, I got to try EMDR. I'm not talking this thing out. 4 sessions. That's all it took. 4 sessions. And I'm a brand new guy, and I think it raised my IQ points at least 3. So I'm happy.
Mm.
The truth is that when I went to get the training, I was like, this is some BS. Like this is like glitter. Nobody wants to do unicorns and glitter for therapy. And at the end of the training, I was like, okay, maybe. But I have to tell you, I've been a therapist for 25 years. This stuff is amazing. Like I've had clients I've been seeing for 3 years working on a trauma and talk therapy, do one session of EMDR, changes the game. It's pretty magical, especially with trauma, really with trauma.
Yeah.
Man, you learn something new every day. Have you ever written papers about this, Dr. Ashley?
Oh, yes. My what part of my passion is everything I do with a critical lens, right? So a colleague of mine who also was trained in EMDR really have been paying attention to the fact that EMDR works differently with people of color, specifically Black folks. And our hypothesis was that because they deal with so much oppression and marginalization, that there's a level above whatever trauma there is of that. So that trauma, and then there's the other trauma, right? And so we wrote a couple of papers about just integrating a more anti-oppressive, right, anti-racist lens with EMDR. So I've written a few papers on that.
Mm-hmm. And can people find some of this work that you've put out? Just can the general public go somewhere and find some of the research that you lay out?
Most of it, I try to publish places that have open access because I don't need other scholars to read it. I mean, I like that if they do, but I want real people to read it. So with that, thank you, David. Thank you, Ivor. I think that, so one is that on my website, right, I have a website that people can go and get some of the articles because I didn't post all of them, but then they can just Google, like they can Google me or they can Google like, EMDR articles. And if they can't find it, they can always email me from my website.
So what's your website?
It's drwendyashley.com.
And there's a great video of you at giving a speech in an organization, right?
There's 3 of them now.
Being honored, right? Yeah.
There's 3 of them. Yeah.
I like it when you use pictures because I have a hard time reading the research, but I like when you do the pictures and
that picture was when I was in 2015. I was Social Worker of the Year, so that's one of my biggest honors. Thank you for remembering that.
Your website is looking top notch. Can I just tell you? Yeah.
Are you looking at it right now?
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
Do you see those lovely pictures I just got done during the pandemic?
Pandemic pictures is what we call them.
Just sidebar. I had paid someone to do my website, right? Because I didn't know how to do it and I hated it. And so I erased it all and made my own. So that is my creation. So thank you for saying that.
It looks great. It's drwendyashley.com. I got to plug 885fm.org. People could find this first ever Voices from the Edge podcast on the radio stations, YouTube, and wherever people could find podcasts. Just search for Voices from the Edge. Any other social media plugs or anything from David, Izzy, or Ivor before we sort of wrap it up here? And I hope you'll join us again in the future, Dr. Ashley, because I feel like we're just scratching the surface as far as some of the stuff that we could delve into.
Oh, I would love to.
Any parting words or any plugs, gentlemen, and Izzy?
Thank you, Dr. Ashley, Wendy, for being here. Wonderful conversation.
Yeah, and thank you for teaching me some beautiful lessons about human connection, humility.
For sure.
Because you always speak your mind. That's what I love, right? We had some fun over those 3 years, so thank you.
Thanks for sharing your musical influences with us. I certainly love talking about that. And man, we sort of delved into some heavy content as well. And it's thought provoking, but it's something that needs to be talked about.
It's a really nice blend of, a little music, a little, social justice, a little therapy. This is fun. Please invite me back. I'll absolutely come.
I'd be happy if the rest of the podcast sort of go like this. On behalf of everybody in the Zoom room, my name is Mookie, or Mark, if you prefer. Voices from the Edge, where music, technology, and culture collide. Are we still going with that, David?
We are.
All right,
we're going to the universe too.
And universe, where the universe collides.